Hello, and welcome to another episode of Oshkosh Area Politics. I'm Paul Esslinger, former mayor of the city of Oshkosh, joined by Ben Schneider, former member of the school board in Oshkosh. And this evening, we're going to kind of wrap up the primary elections that just took place in the United States Senate, the Senate race that's going to be happening here in our area, the 53rd and the 54th Assembly races. So, with that, Ben, thanks for showing up again, being here, and talking about a few issues.
Yeah, it seems like we're in constant election cycle, doesn't it?
Well, no, seriously, I think I was watching some show and they said that we've had, 4 or 5 elections in the last year or something like that.
I actually would have to think about that, but it seems like there's just a constant stream of ads, and so now we'll have a short break. But
No, we didn't. We have not had a short break.
Well,
I think it was the day after the primary was done. I think
Yeah.
I saw a Tommy Thompson ad, and then you had the Baldwin ads that were
I guess,
running
yeah,
before
you're right.
that. So it's a nonstop process since the 1st of June, all
Yeah.
the way through November. So put your seatbelt on while you're sitting on the couch and or in your recliner. And
yeah, I was frankly a little surprised at the U.S. Senate primary. You know, as people know, Tommy Thompson, Hovde, Mark Newman, and the Assembly,
Fitzgerald.
the Senate leader Fitzgerald, well, minority leader now, Fitzgerald were on the ballot, and I frankly thought that the voters had a pretty good candidates to pick from. I wasn't surprised that Tommy Thompson won. He was leading in the polls, and I know Hovde was close. I frankly was a little surprised that Mark Newman didn't show better. I mean, I thought he was an extremely hard campaigner, and just for some reason his message didn't resonate with the voters throughout the state. And Tommy Thompson actually won with 34% of the vote, and Hovde obviously 31, and Mark Newman 23, and Jeff Fitzgerald 12. But what's interesting now, in the November election, obviously Tommy Thompson, the Republican candidate, will face Tammy Baldwin, who is a U.S. Congresswoman from the Madison area, and she's given up her seat to run for U.S. Senate. And I just saw a poll yesterday out, I believe it was sponsored by Marquette, and I saw a Rasmussen poll also, and Tommy's got about a 9-point lead amongst Lakely voters.
right.
And that's a pretty tough hill to climb, because Tammy Baldwin is, I believe, in the top 20 most liberal members of Congress. And when you're up in the Nancy Pelosi liberal territory, in a hardworking state like Wisconsin, people that they work hard, they earn their paycheck, and they they don't take kindly, I think, to extremism from the West Coast. I think Tommy's going to have unless he has some serious missteps, I think he's going to have probably a double-digit victory.
Right. Well, I mean, just going back to this U.S. Senate race here in the primary, I thought I remember seeing a poll somewhere along the line, I think it was towards the end, that actually had Hovde above Thompson by a point or two. But I think, like you said, by and large, I think the polls that were taken were fairly accurate. But I would like to see, and I don't have the information on this, on the dollars spent for each of the candidates. Now, I know Mr. Hovde is a financial, isn't he some kind of Wall Street guy or something like that? And he spent multi-millions of dollars of his own money, and did a very good showing. Newman obviously, I think, spent less, and Fitzgerald didn't compare as far as dollars spent. So is this if you spend the dollars you do better?
Well, what's interesting about the race is Tommy obviously won, and you could argue that he beat the next person by 10%, so 31 to 34 is a 10% increase. But and it seems like Hovde and Newman and Fitzgerald, or particularly Hovde and Newman, were just taking constant shots at Tommy. And I know the Club for Growth and some Tea Party groups were going after Tommy Thompson pretty hard.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of money spent in the race. I think a lot of outside money had Tommy reduced to a 34% vote total. And I think if it wasn't for that, I think he would have had a much stronger vote total, because frankly, I think Tommy Thompson is more of a moderate. He has, over the years, I know he champions some quote-unquote conservative causes, but he has taken on some pretty moderate stances over the years. And I know when he was He was a cabinet member of the Bush administration. He kind of championed arguably some more liberal causes, and I think that's going to bode well in a statewide race where you need to do well in Madison, Milwaukee. But I think unless he has an Aiken moment, I think he's going to do very well in the general election. And I think for the first time in a very long time, and I don't know how long it's been, when we had two senators from Wisconsin that were both U.S. senators from Wisconsin that were both Republicans. Actually, when Kasten was a senator before, I don't know how long it's been, but I think that's where we're headed down towards. So I don't know if you'd like to place a wager on this again.
No, I lost the last one, so
Yeah, you did.
let me recover from that. I'm not a big shot.
You actually lost two of them for the record.
Well, that's maybe for another show. But getting back to this, I think Thompson, when he was governor, kind of in the boom time, he was, as far as conservatives goes, he was pretty liberal. I mean, he was way to the left on the right side, if that even makes any sense. So I think Tommy Thompson is kind of a product of whatever's going on at the time. And we discussed this the other day. Now that the assembly is held by Republicans, the assembly held by Republicans, and yet to be determined yet as far as the Senate. If that sways over and everything's Republican, I think Tommy Thompson's going to get a lot more conservative. Would you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I think, one of the reasons why I like Mark Newman is because I think he was conservative before conservative was kind of cool. When times were good, let's face it, both Republicans, Democrats were partying, and they were just kicking the can down the road. And it seems like whatever party's in power, they're guilty of their predecessors that they attempt to replace. And I think Tommy Thompson, frankly, I think he kind of was guilty of some of that. He grew the government, and they balanced the books because the Constitution requires that, but did they really because of the county gimmicks? But clearly, voters are extremely disenfranchised with the amount of debt that's being accumulated, and I think, based on the electorate, I think Tommy will be pulled to be more fiscally conservative. And I think that's really a major issue. People are just terrified of the amount of debt that's going to be passed on to the next generation.
I am.
And on a side note, our viewers should know that almost 30 cents of every dollar that the city taxes goes to debt service. And a few years ago, it was 25 cents of every dollar. Actually, it's between 25 and 30, but it's every year it's going up by a few pennies.
Going up by a Butterburger basket every year.
Right. And at what point in time is the bulk of the tax dollars going to be financing past consumption? Because that's what debt is. Mm-hmm. And $16 trillion in debt and counting as a federal government, and I believe the CBO projects another $1 trillion deficit for next fiscal year. That's a lot of interest that will be taken out of the economy because interest on debt pays for past consumption.
Well, and the frustrating thing, though, Ben, is you have politicians who keep bringing this up, saying there's a problem, more liberals than conservatives, but they never do anything about it. They love to talk about it, and they never do anything about it. That's, I think, the frustrating part.
And just to put a fine point on that, I know a lot of people have been watching various news channels, and they say, well, when George Bush was in office or when this person was in office, they did the same thing, and they're right.
Yes,
and
they are.
But I would contend that just because you're a Republican doesn't mean you're responsible or you've been fiscally conservative. Because to me, a person that's conservative balances the books, and they don't find all the right reasons to do the wrong things.
And we could sit here for the rest of the time that we have talking about Republicans that spent a lot of money and spent it foolishly, but that's not what we're here. Let's go on to the next topic. I actually crossed it out as I was writing. Ladies and gentlemen, see, Ben Schneider gets these fancy, nice things that are printed off. I had to write mine down on paper, so Ben's the big shot here. He gets the fancy stuff, but...
So you're criticizing me for coming prepared?
No, I deleted the email and I didn't have it,
okay.
So I apologize.
Hey, if you're a slacker, that's on you, man. It's not on me.
Want to go outside?
Hey, after the show.
Okay. So let's get into the Thompson Baldwin, the Rick Gudicks and Jess King. Obviously, we can't talk too much about the primary because they were running unopposed in their respective Republican and Democrat seats. What do you think is going to happen here?
That's going to be a tough. That's going to be an interesting election. I believe Jessica King has over $70,000 raised so far,
I think
and
it's around 80 if I'm
and
right.
Rick Gudix, he has a little more than half of that, I believe, and I know he's a very hard campaigner. He's been knocking on doors. He's been doing a lot of fundraisers, and Rick Gudix, the Republican nominee, is the current council president in Fond du Lac, so I presume he'll have a very strong showing in Fond du Lac, and he's been working really hard in the Oshkosh area. But I'm not going to make any predictions about who I think we're going to win, because I want our viewers to know that it's our intention to reach out to Rick Gudix and Jessica King, as well as the candidates for the 53rd and the 54th Assembly Districts. And we are going to have we want to host a one-on-one debate. And obviously, since you're a candidate for the 54th, you will not be a moderator for something that you'll be a participant in, because that'd be kind of,
come on.
that'd look a little strange. But we are going to reach out to both Rick Gudix and Jessica King and hold a debate. And if one of them chooses not to participate, we're going to hold it anyway. And we're going to give them a half an hour to convince voters why they should be elected, and we're going to ask the tough questions. So it's going to be a good election, and I know that election is going to get a lot of statewide interest, because with the 17-16 Democrats controls the state Senate
right now.
that is a pivotal election to pass, for example, the mining bill. And I know Jess King voted against the mining bill, which was projected to create up to 3,000 high-paying jobs in a very depressed area of northern Wisconsin that was supported there. And so I think there'll be a lot of outside money in this race, and it's going to be a very good, it's going to be a very interesting race.
Yeah. Well, one more thing about Rick Gudix. I used to work in Fond du Lac for several years, and talked to some folks that live down there. And as you correctly stated, Rick Gudix is the president of the city council down there. And they have told me that a lot of the people, I don't know if it's a majority, I think majority of the council members, it's a nonpartisan seat, but as you know, the people that fill the seats do have partisan politics. And, a lot of them are Democrats on those councils that Rick Gudix either serves on now or has served on. And they elected him as the president of the council. And when you can do that, I think that's showing that you have the respect of the people that you serve with on the council. And I think it also shows that he knows how to cross over to at least talk and discuss about issues to better help, in this instance, the city of Fond du Lac.
Yeah, and aside from Jessica King appearing to be relatively cozy with that Ian Murphy, the gentleman that basically said blank the troops and was very just nasty regarding that, she seems to have kind of worked with both sides of the aisle. She hasn't been nasty. She hasn't threatened, to my knowledge, any colleague's life in the assembly floor. So, I think it's going to be a spirited race, but I think it'll be cordial, and I don't think she's going to follow one of her local colleagues' path and say you're blankety blank dead to anybody. So I really look forward to having a debate with both of those individuals, and we'll see where the voters see where the votes fall on November 6th.
Right. Okay, let's move on to what I think is probably the most interesting of the races, was the 53rd Assembly District race. We had the three candidates that were running there, Michael Schirra, Frank Frassetto, and Kurt Schuler. We interviewed all three of them. I liked all three of the guys. I thought they were really good. And all three of them certainly were well capable of filling that seat and doing a great job. Michael Schirra from owns Leon's Frozen Custard, was the winner. And he won in convincing, unbelievable convincing fashion. Michael Schirra had 61%, Frank Frassetto 27%, and Mr. Schuler at 12%. So what are your thoughts on the disparity there?
Well, I was actually really surprised by that race. In fact, there's a lot that I have to say about that, and I actually would like to, if it's okay with you, I'd like to
take a break.
Kind of gather our thoughts. And
I got my thoughts gathered. Why do you need to
really?
gather
Well,
yours?
you didn't come prepared, buddy. So
I said my thoughts were gathered. I didn't say my notes were gathered.
So
The government has no place in our bedrooms.
No.
Okay. So you're in support of contraception?
Yes.
Government-funded contraception. Why do you believe the government should pay for what goes on inside your bedroom?
That's a very good question.
I'm not sure how to answer that question, but I think it's important to be available to have contraception.
I'm like all for abortion. I'm all for birth control. I'm like all for abortion. I'm all for birth control. Like,
So you don't think the government should be involved in what goes on inside the bedroom, correct?
oh, exactly. Oh, not even close. No.
So then why do you expect the government to pay for what goes on inside the bedroom?
Because a lot of people don't have the privilege of being able to afford contraceptives. So if we have that more readily available, then we wouldn't have people out here starving. We wouldn't have
So
children.
contraception solves hunger.
Well, I believe it has a big part in it. I mean, I really do.
Yeah.
If you can't afford a child, you
Plus,
should have
also,
one.
if you're hungry, you can just eat contraception.
These are not feelings that male fellow students experience.
So if maybe the family is financially unable to support a baby, they should have an abortion?
I
If a
believe
family-
so, yes.
I don't think.
So what did Sandra Fluke have to say?
She was actually quite funny. She said that through all of the difficult things that she went through with Rush Limbaugh, and Mitt Romney actually did not even speak out against him. She couldn't count on one of the presidential candidates to say he was out of line, which is really pretty incredible when you think about it, how he attacked her, and that President Obama was with her every step of the way.
So actually, recently, Harry Reid has come out and claimed that Mitt Romney may be a felon because he hasn't paid any taxes.
Right.
Yep, Obama hasn't come out and denounced those claims that are unsubstantiated. Do you think Obama should come out and denounce Harry Reid?
I think that's a very interesting question. We don't know if it's true or not true.
Okay, we're back from that video. Was that a comedy video, or was that a really kind of a telling video, do you think, Ben? Before we get back to the 53rd.
Yeah, before we get back to the 53rd, I just thought that was really an interesting. And really what I find is there's a lot of people that want to use emotion to validate their position. And what you had is a gentleman who politely was using facts and logic, and he essentially paralyzed them.
Facts and logic, isn't that what we do here?
I like to think so.
Okay.
And for the record, for those that don't agree, and we'll talk about this in a few seconds, actually shortly, about how we've reached out with so many people that
we do need to get to that.
elected officials, and we just seem to struggle to get certain individuals to come on the show. But yeah, I thought that was a really interesting segment, and it just highlights how so many people just have these deep-rooted held beliefs, and when someone simply asks,
Do you love the part where you could cue the crickets? I mean, is that not the greatest thing in the world when these liberals, they have the emotional answer that they always give, and then when you ask a question and you turn the microphone back on them, you have the deer in the headlight look, like, ooh.
right?
Boy.
So the government should be out of the bedroom, but the government should pay for contraception.
Absolutely.
And simply this gentleman asked, isn't it inconsistent?
That, my friend, is hypocrisy. But we got to get back to the 53rd thing
sure.
here. Okay, so the discrepancy, 61 to 27, Mr. Schra over Mr. Frassetto. What do you think there?
Well, obviously, as you stated, we had all three gentlemen on the program. I think Michael Schra benefited from, frankly, he got out early and announced his candidacy for the 53rd. He announced his candidacy for the 53rd while Dick Spanbauer, the current incumbent, prior to him even announcing he wasn't going to seek re-election. And we had Mike sitting at this table announcing his candidacy, and he basically said, I want to take that seat away from Representative Spanbauer. I thought he did a very good job of laying out the reasons. You may or may not agree with them. However, I think it's a combination of many factors. He worked very hard. He lengthened the campaign season because he got out so early, and he went against two very strong opponents. And people should note that Kurt Schuler is a current state treasurer, so he won a statewide race with over nearly 1.1 million votes, and very well-spoken individual, had very good ideas. It was very able to articulate those ideas, and I think at the end, Mike Schra one, because he worked harder, he campaigned longer, harder, and he went after it. Furthermore, if I can get this, I mean, Michael Schra is the owner of Leon's Frozen Custard. And anybody that's eaten it, and anything that's consumed anybody that's consumed anything at Leon's Frozen Custard, no, it's a very fine establishment.
You bet.
And you know, he employs a lot of people. I think he's got a great reputation. They've done a lot of good work in the community, and so perhaps it was a little unfair because, I mean, when you got serving that good of food, I mean, who's going to vote against you?
Well, that's a good point. Two things that I wanted to talk about that I think had a huge effect. Number one is if you looked at where Mr. Frassetto and Mr. Schra lived, Michael Schra lived in the town of Algoma, and I believe he's been there for a long time. Mr. Frassetto has lived in the town of Black Wolf, and he's been there for a long time.
And he's a current Black Wolf chairman.
Absolutely, chairman there. But I think, and I don't have the stats on it, but I think the town of Algoma, the population in the town of Algoma is larger than the population of Black Wolf, so I think that may have had to do something with it. But I think, for me, I think the overwhelming reason that he did so well is because that whole boycott issue. Now remember, this was a Republican primary, so by and large Republicans voting in this election. You know, you had Mr. Len Herricks, who was the union president a year or 2 years ago.
In early 2011, he was a target of of a boycott by the then union president, and
Right.
he urged his 800 plus members to boycott Leon's Frozen Custard.
Right, and I think he sent out an email on school district email,
Right.
which in our opinion was illegal. So he did that. That got some media play in the paper, on the radio here, and Mr. Schra told me that after that, he had some of the best months he had ever had because of that boycott, because people just don't put up with that kind of you-know-what. So I think, and with Republicans voting, they don't put up with that either. And so,
And actually, I want to really draw a distinction, because I know I believe you believe this also. I don't think he did so well. I mean, he got twice as many votes as his next next challenger. I don't think he did so well because he was a target of boycott. I think it revealed his character, that he wasn't going to be bullied, and he wasn't going to allow someone to attempt to suppress his First Amendment right. He was boycotted for putting a sign in his establishment. So he wouldn't have been subject to a boycott if the president of the union would have witnessed him putting a candidate that was a liberal candidate in his establishment. He was target because the union president didn't agree with his sign of Scott Walker and Ron Johnson, so he decided to put I believe it was a Scott Walker sign. He decided to put out the boycott, and I think that revealed to many people how this gentleman is the kind of candidate that people want to see, and he's not going to fold when the time gets tough. And that clearly, in my opinion, was reflected at the primary election just a couple weeks ago.
well, one other thing I would say with Mr. Schra is I watched the debates that he was in with the other two gentlemen and the two Democrats. And Michael Schra, and I mean this with all due respect, he just seemed like the average guy. He was the average guy that had had enough, went through a boycott, got tired of that, wasn't going to be bullied around, it wasn't going to be pushed around. He had his First Amendment rights that were being trampled. And so he just said, and he's like you said, he said early on, I've had enough, I'm running for this spot. So I think he had a lot of fire, got into the debates and, kind of stumbled around a little bit, but I've done that, you've done that. Anyone that runs for office gets in front of a camera.
You've done that more than me, though, I think.
No, I think you're wrong.
I
can bet on. So we'll go back over 11 years of all the tapings of stuff, and we'll figure it out. And you can report it at the next.
I think you've stumbled more, but who am I to make the determination?
Well, you've been wrong before, and you'll be wrong again.
But I think what this boycott revealed to a lot of people is it introduced Michael Schra to the public. A lot of people didn't know who he was.
That's right.
I didn't even know. Frankly, I didn't know who he was, and he owned Leon's even before that happened.
Right.
And when I became involved as a school board member, because some people dropped off some emails saying our tax dollars are used to basically promote targeting a business, a tax-paying business, who employs many students that that work there to raise money for college and for schooling, etc. And I think that as a result of that, it turned out to be a really good thing. So, so Len Herricks, if you're watching, thanks for doing that, because you actually probably got Michael Schra elected to the assembly, because I think he's going to do very well against his GOP opponent, because if my understanding is GOP opponent didn't even show up for any of the
Democrat opponent.
Excuse me. The Democratic opponent that he now will face, this Ryan Felter, I believe didn't even show up for the debates.
Right.
So,
but that was the primary debate. To be fair, that was the primary debate. There will be another one, I'm sure,
right,
coming up. So it's yet to be determined if he will be there for.
But he had two other opponents.
He did have two other opponents.
So I don't know. When you ran for mayor against, when you ran for mayor, I know you had an opponent every time you ran for mayor. I presume you bothered to show up for every debate.
I did.
Because, last time I checked, if you're running for office and you don't show up for a debate, it's usually not viewed very well.
That's true. But again, to be fair, maybe there was a family emergency. Maybe he was on vacation. We don't know.
Yeah, and actually, if that's the case, I retract that.
But maybe Mr. Herricks will be getting a Christmas present this year from Mr. Schra. Maybe a gallon of custard or something.
Maybe. So I know, Paul. It's probably, I should probably take the next one, the Assembly District 54. Mm-hmm. You obviously were on the ballot, and you're running against Gordon Hintz, who's been in the office for nearly six years, or three terms. It's a 2-year term. And you obviously didn't have a GOP primary opponent. You received, the votes that we probably anticipated you receive, nearly 3,000 votes. And I believe Gordon Hintz received a little over 700. And, that doesn't really reflect too much, because there wasn't a reason to come out and vote for that race. But obviously there's a reason to vote for the GOP primary, U.S. Senate primary. And that was the main reason I think people came out for that race. So, and for the record, I'm going to reach out to Gordon Hintz, and obviously we're going to try to have a debate between both you and Gordon, and I'm going to invite a guest co-host that is I'm going to invite a guest co-host who's on the opposite end of the political spectrum as me, and I hope that both of you can be in the room and discuss why you'd be the best candidate or the best person for the representing the 54th Assembly District. So I want to reach out to all the candidates, the 53rd, 54th, the 18th Senate District, and indicate that you're invited to be on this. So please take us up on this offer, because you will be invited, and if you choose not to attend, that's your deal, but your opponent will have basically the full opportunity to take that and convince people why they're worthy of that office.
Well, obviously I will be here for that, and I like these types of venues where you're not on a clock. You get to talk however you want to talk, and I think that for viewers, that really shows the type of person. They don't have the canned answers. They don't have canned questions and whatever else. So I think when I see debates like this in venues like this, where they just kind of bat it around a little bit, I think it bodes well for the voters. So I think we've had Tony Palmieri when I announced. So hopefully maybe Tony will be back for the debate.
You'd be good.
Okay, so with that, unfortunately, we are out of time. Until next time, for Ben Schneider, I'm Paul Esslinger, and thank you for watching this episode of Oshkosh Area Politics. Good night and God bless.